Hi, everybody. You're watching The New Normal. I'm your host, Lisa Davis, aka Like Queen Lisa, and this is a really special episode near and dear to my heart. My friend Amy Fulmer, the reason that we met is that we are both angel parents, and that means that we have had a child that has passed over. And I met another really special angel parent, Satoshi Sean, through cryptocurrency, and he shared with me that he has lost a child and recently lost a nephew and then a niece just in this last week. And so we really want to share our stories and how we kind of walk with grief and the challenges that we face, and the beautiful parts of it too, and the things that we've learned through that. So we want to share that with you guys. We know a lot of people are hurting right now. And we want to reach out to those people and do what we can to help others. So we'll be right back. And you guys give us a like, share this video, and let's see what we can do to help people when they're struggling with grief. Hi, guys. Thanks so much for joining me, Amy and Sean. I know this is a challenging subject, but we're all, we've been in the depth of grief, but we also know that we can stand together and help people through this. And Sean, you're just kind of right at that really raw point. You've had some recent tragedy in your family, as well as, a history where you've lost your son. And with what you're comfortable sharing, would you kind of bring everybody up to where you are?
I lost my son Robert like 9 years ago, which was terrible and it's really, really rough. It doesn't. You said something to me, which because you try to explain it to people, and even I can't explain it. How the grief is. And when my nephew died about a month ago, about a little over 3 weeks ago, you know, uh, his uncle was asking me like, how I don't know how to deal with this. How does it get better? And it really doesn't get easier. It doesn't get better. But like you said, it's a process, and it's not that some people say it gets easier to live with or you get used to it, but that's not true. You don't get used to it, and it doesn't get easier. It's a process. It's something that's not like anything else. It's like plasma. It's not a liquid. It's not a solid. It's not a gas. It's completely its own thing. It's a completely different. Uh, it's a different kind of grief. When you lose your child, I think it's, and I mean I've had time to think about it. I think because it's so unnatural. We're not. It's not built into our brains to be able to process it. I mean, I've had my parents pass away. I've had grandparents pass away because it's a natural thing. But to have a child, die before you, it's not. It's not natural. It's not something that we're, I think, ingrained to handle. That we're not. It's not. We're not set up to. Oh, this happened. This is supposed to happen. It's circle of life kind of thing. It's not. Um, so that was my son Robert. Um, it was a terrible ordeal. Uh, I mean, it's obviously terrible, but I was a I was a single father of two sets of twins. So I raised them, by themselves. Their mother is here, but not involved. They're here, but she was at the hospital. Her family, same, not involved, but they were at the hospital. Uh, and everyone was just, all right, let's pull the plug. And I was the only person for, it was like 10 days every day. We'd meet with the doctor because he was shot. Uh,
Mm.
and I'd say, okay, well, So there's no brain activity. We're not getting enough brain activity. Technically he's brain dead. The machine's keeping him alive. Okay, so is there a chance that we'll be able to, this will come back, or, is that it? He's like, well, there's a chance. Okay, then no. And it was an argument every day. We go in that little room, and my ex would be, I really think we need to pull the plug. Gotta pull the plug. And her mother's like, yeah, you gotta pull the plug. Gotta pull the plug. And I'm like, no, there's a chance. Why would I do that? There's a chance. And then actually, it's like, there's people here that are being supportive, but they have to go to work. They have lives you need to get back to. You need to pull the plug. And I was like, kiss my ass, man. No, I don't care if that's inconvenient. You can leave. But it was after 10 days. And since my son, Robert always said, he's like, man, Dad, I'm not going to live till I'm 20. There's no way I'm going to make it till I'm 20. I'm too wild. And I was like, of course you are. And it was like 5 or 6 days before his 20th birthday. Oh, and, I finally said, because the doctor said there's no chance. Either you pull the plug or he'll die from an infection, within a period of time. So I said, okay. And that's something that no one talks about. No one talks about that. But I killed my son because I gave that order to turn the machine off. And everyone says, no, there's nothing you could do. And they're right. And I understand that. But I still was the one, like his heart stopped and his body, existence here stopped because I said so. And, the day before his anniversary is tough for me because I have to deal with that. And they don't ever talk to you about that. No one ever gets you ready for that. It's a very big, it's a big decision. It's a terrible decision.
I understand the weight of that. I was in the same position. During my divorce, I fought. That was the one thing I fought for, was medical final say, because I had two. My twins were medically fragile, and I fought for medical final say. I took care of them. I took them all their visits. He never went to a doctor visit, never did anything, but for some reason, he wanted to look like Dad of the Year. And so he fought me for medical equality with our parenting. And when it came down to it, she got very sick and had cancer. And then the day of, I took her to the clinic, and during the day she started vomiting blood. We went down to the ER. They intubated her. It all escalated really quickly. And sometime during the night, they had opened her abdomen because her organs were swelling. They couldn't get the infection down. Like, it was just escalating so fast. And I'm like they're like, you need to call him. He needs to be here in case we have to resuscitate, whatever, because he'll have to give permission, whatever. And so I call, and he went back to sleep. And so I call, and she codes, and they're like, do we have permission? And I say yes, and we can't get a hold of him. And he went back to sleep. And then, so finally, then he wouldn't say, he's like, well, do whatever you want. And I was like, no, you fought me on this. All that you fought me on this, and we went through, 3 days of trial and all these expenses because you wanted to have this medical say, and now you're going to be a coward and not make this decision and put it on me, And so I understand. So we did, thankfully the PICU doctor was one of my friends from church, and she got on the phone with him, and basically he cowered it out and said, whatever, I said. So we did resuscitate her one time, and then he went back to sleep, didn't come up to the hospital. And they were able to resuscitate her one time, and then it happened again. And watching them do that to your daughter is a horrible thing. And so I said no, not to do it again the second time, because it makes horrible noise. Her organs came out of her body like it's a very violent thing. And but they had to call him again and wake him up, and he still wasn't on his way. So I understand that. It's a horrible place for a parent to have to be put in that position to make that decision.
It is terrible. And once you do, it's done, and you can't, and no one can help.
You can't undo it. Yeah.
And no one can help you. No one can make me feel better. I'm not. It's the fact that I made that decision. No one should have to make that decision, and I had to make that decision. And I understand there was nothing else I could do. I understand it was the best decision to make. And in
your situation, especially, like, he couldn't. Well, in all of our situations, they couldn't. There wasn't. It was a matter of time.
Yeah.
Like Sean, he couldn't have.
In my black and white mind.
Yeah.
His life ended because I said so. And that's it. And if I would have prolonged it, or I would have put it out, it would have been worse for him. It would have, he may have had pain and
right.
But then I wouldn't have had to make this decision. I would have been cowardly. But it
was a decision of
my
love
responsibility that it ended, and every year I have to face that, and it's terrible.
No.
Sean, can I say something to you?
Mm-hmm.
And I also want to thank you and Lisa for putting together this forum. It's difficult. And it's so needed because our society does not teach us how to grieve. There's no playbook for this. And Sean, you're right. There's a thing called death cooties. You can't talk about it to anybody. My son died at 19, so I share that young, tender age with you. But I have to tell you, and Lisa, from an outside, my son started passing in my arms. He died at 19, and it was January 1st, 2014. And he had fentanyl in his system. And I thought he was sleeping, and he actually started passing in my arms. I didn't know. So unlike you guys who had the trauma of having to make such decisions, I feel really strongly that I know, Lisa, you know where I stand, because Lisa and I have a history of a friendship of sharing this. But Sean, I have to say this to you as one angel parent to another. And I really want you to just try, if you can, to just be open. I feel that your son really loves you for the decision that you had to make. And he knows how hard it was for you. And he's so happy that you did that, so he didn't have to live in this body of pain and heartache. And not many people have the courage to do what you did and what Lisa did. And I feel that Mia, Lisa's daughter, and Sean, your son, you're like heroes for them on the other side, because you did what most humans can't do. I'm so sorry, you guys. I'll try to get it together here. It's just hard for me. But I want you to know that, Sean.
That's a great point, Amy. Robert trusted you, Sean, to do the right thing for him. He knew that you would do the right thing for him.
Right.
That's pretty incredible.
Yeah, I know. It's still, and something about teaching us to grieve. Men are terrible. I mean, I'm older. I'm an older guy. It's I think gotten better, but like I was raised by my mom for most of my life. She remarried when I was 12, but like I wasn't raised by a single parent. I didn't come from a single parent home. I came from a broken home, where it was difficult. Like I could get picked on because I didn't have a dad. Not by kids, but by adults, by teachers and principals, because I had no father who would. It was like, and my mother was, a doctorate. She had a doctorate in theology. She had a master's in something else. She was, a brilliant person, and but I just, there's such a huge difference in that late '70s, early '80s time of growing up, that I can remember. I had to lie and say that, oh, my dad was killed in Vietnam. It's like, all right, that sucks. We won't beat you up, but you still ain't got no dad. So it was, it was a very different time. My mom was I grew up in Europe for a good chunk of my life, and my mother was in charge of all of the churches for all of all of Europe, for all the military. It was, like hundreds of every military base, and she was she got paid a lot. She was like a GS 13 or 14, which is like a general, but she had a military commander that she reported to was a colonel, and we moved from the States to Europe, and everything was great for like 2 years, and then she had a government contract, and her colonel left, and a new colonel came in, and she's like, okay, time to renew the contract, and the guy said, no, you're a woman. This is such an important job. A woman can't do this job. She's like, I've been doing this job for 2 years. He's like, no, you're a woman. This a man needs to have this job. That's like unheard of now, but that's what happened. And we're in Europe, and she was like, that's it. So she took a reducement in pay, and she ran a rec center on another military base. That's where she met my stepdad, and we got married, and they got married, and we came to Texas. But it was a very different time, and I've noticed that when it comes to angel parents, any groups that I'm, like for support or anything, it's all us, us mothers, and and it's never, they never talk to that. Oh, and Sean, there's like literally
Yeah.
there's like 50 women, and there's like 2 guys, and if a guy comes in, a lot of times they're very standoffish. They're very, because they don't know how to deal with it, and they're, it's like, Sean, can you talk to this guy? He doesn't want to talk to anyone, and because
Well,
I don't know.
I think about even on the videos that I was watching last night, and no offense, I mean, those are friends of ours, but like you were just mentioning that you were coming on this video tonight, and the guys like totally avoided that you even.
They froze.
They were like, oh, sorry to hear that. Anyway, let's talk about something else other than the fact that you just mentioned that your niece was shot and that your nephew committed suicide. Like, it's like not even take a breath and look you in the face and say, man, are you okay? I'm really sorry for your loss, and are you okay?
My mom, and having that in a time when it was not cool, I stepped back, and I thought things were so weird. Like, my buddy Lee from Kiss Crypto, I tell him I love him, and he freaks out every time. He's like, fucking hell, Sean, why you gotta make it weird? I'm like, dude, but
it's not weird.
And most guys are like that, but if you have like just one beer, you're not drunk, you're not buzzed, but if you have a beer, you can be, I love you, man, and it's okay. It's weird that there's these these things we have to go through, these like rituals, to where like it's okay for now. It's not for me to tell you how I feel. It's okay for me to not be a certain way. But
so, Sean, in order to make you feel a little bit better, so I know that my name is the Grief Goddess, and I work with parents, and my work is followed in over 70 countries. I don't know if you've been to my website, but there's some free resources there that might bring you some solace. But anyway, be what it may, it's a legit fact that men grieve completely different than women do. In fact, they've done MRI studies, and first of all, the grieving brain, your brain can literally be picked up by a neurologist. It looks completely different than a regular brain. And then to take it 2 steps further, women's brains when they grieve are different than men's brains when they grieve. They look different under an MRI situation. So you're absolutely right. But here's where we don't differ. If you, and you meaning any human, does not deal with your grief in the way that you are now, your grief will deal with you. So I really want to say that again. If anybody out there is grieving the loss of a loved one, if you don't work on that grief, getting it out of your body, the grief metastasizes inside of you, and then things like cancer and all kinds of weird stuff start to happen. So part of my body of work is teaching people how to release in forums such as this. And it all starts with, Sean, I really have to commend you, because you're absolutely right. As a man, to come on and sit between Lisa and I, the alpha women, you know what I mean? Is so brave of you. And it's such a testimony to your son. It's so beautiful. And you are doing absolutely the right thing, because anyone who's lost a parent, it's like we're disabled. We have a disability and you just can't see it. So if you see, like, for example, a vet in a wheelchair and his arms have been blown off, his legs have been blown off, you know that that's a disabled person. So you have a different mindset. But the problem with angel parents is there's no way, and we all put the happy face on. Lisa does it, I do it, you do it. But the truth of the matter is we're disabled and will remain disabled. I contend that it's a soul, like, in other words, our souls are permanently changed. So even when we go on to our next life, and yes, you will meet with your son again, I promise you on my son's head that your son will be there for you when you cross over. But the point is that pain in your heart will be with you. And then what starts to happen, if you do the right work, you will start to see the beauty. And this is really hard to hear, but trust me on this. There's beauty in that pain, because if you didn't love so much, you wouldn't hurt so much. So the pain that you feel for your child is commensurate with the love that you had. So I tell people, and Lisa knows this too, I would have rather had my son for 19 years and to have experienced the love with him. And if I had it to do all over again, I'd do it again. If I knew I was only going to have him for 19 years, I'd do it again, because of the love I experienced. And I know Lisa feels that way with Mia.
Absolutely. I know. I mean, because, well, when I married Charlie, I mean, people gave me a lot of crap that they were like, oh, so much so soon or something like that. And I was like, it's only because I experienced so much sadness that I appreciate love in my life. And I don't want, when I met Charlie and I can feel so much love, and I don't want a second away from anyone I love so greatly. I spend time with my mom and my dad, and I, spend every minute I can with my children, and I reach out to my people that I love in my life, and I try to make sure I connect with them, because I understand how quickly it all goes by, and because I have experienced such great pain and grief, that I value love so deeply. So I think that all that judgment, is just, that's all their crap. You know what I mean? That's for them.
There is a lot of judgment. Like, I remember I I don't know. There's things I want to really say, but I don't want to say them because it makes me feel like a dick. Um, like my I raised two sets of twins alone. My wife did nothing. She lived in the next town, 5 minutes away, and they never stayed the night at her house. They never stayed the weekend. There wasn't like any other holiday things, nothing. And she got married right away, like as soon as I got divorced. Um, I didn't want to get divorced. I wanted to work things out, but and it was not me. We don't need to get into that, but it was I agreed to the divorce after I realized she wasn't the person that I married. I just had to kind of go on to where that person was dead. Um, it's like she's a completely different person. And I told her, I was like, you're a completely different person now than the person I married. And she's, said, yeah. I said, so I think I should get to know you, and we should, we should start over again. And she's like, yeah, but I don't want to be a mother. I don't want to be tied. I want to like party and you know, like live crazy. So anyway, she met this guy. She met lots of guys, but she wanted to get married. And in Texas, you can't get married for 6 months after you get divorced. It's like a law. But there's like an amendment. You can get special permission from a judge to get married in 30 days. Um, so we go do the divorce. We're up there, and I'm a large guy, and I'm getting divorced, so I'm not happy. So we're up there in front of the judge. I'm standing there, just I'm getting divorced. I'm very not happy, and they pull her aside, and they're like, "Of course, you mean the divorce is like I have 100% custody of the kids." Um, I just said whatever the minimum child support is. I didn't care, just whatever the minimum is. So everything's obviously slanted towards me. Um, and they pull her aside and they're like, "Is he threatening you? Is
Oh
he
my
is he been
gosh.
beating you?" And she's just dying laughing because she really was, treated me like shit there in the end. So she's laughing. I'm like, "What are you laughing about?" And she told me. I was like, "What the hell's wrong with you people?" And they're like, "Well, she looks so angry." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm getting divorced. Who comes in here smiling and happy?" And then the judge is like, "Okay, you get divorced." And she said, "Well, I want to get married within next month." And then just like, "No, you can't do that. You gotta wait 6 months." And she's like, "No, you can fill out a XJ332-4." And he's like, "No." Like, what are you talking? So the clerk had to look it up. Like, yeah, it's a real thing. So, um, but the thing that really bothers me is the dude that she married is just a guy, and then they have a weird open relationship, and there's like they have boyfriends and girlfriends. They're all just they're messed up. But when Robert died, all over social media, his stepfather was so hurt, and I'm like,
Oh wow.
this dude, maybe spent an hour, 2 hours with
Hmm.
him in 5 years, 6 years. Um, and still, it's very hard for me to grieve, and I'm like, yeah. And then she's and she's messed up, and I'm still trying to be nice and supportive to her, but it's so hard when they're. And now I have a grandson, and she lives alone with her mom. She's still married to this guy because she has health insurance through his job, but he was an alien from Canada, so if they got married, he would be able to live here. But he has a girlfriend that lives in the house that also I gave her money for. And she lives in a little house with her mom. But this guy goes over to my kid's house to see his grandson. It drives me batty. I
Hmm.
mean, even she takes him over there like there's still some normalcy, but And then my son Nick, he's like, well, Mom really takes things hard because of Robert, and I think she uses it, the grief of his grief, to be able to do that, and it's just so, it makes me so angry. But
Well, I
then
think you're bringing up grief from different things. I mean, you're bringing up
Right.
divorce and the death and all of that. And I think that all of those are valid. And I
but
think a
I'm
lot of
trying,
people
like I
experience
try to
those. Yeah,
respect her grief with Robert dying, and not just go off and say, I don't want this dude around my grandkids. I don't like him anyway. Robert hated him and wanted to beat him
right.
up. I mean, I don't like him because so. But I'm like, but I'm like, maybe you do have this grief, and it's your grief, and I don't know how you feel, and so I just step back, but it really irks me.
So you know what happens, Sean, sometimes here I hear you saying, there's a thing called complicated bereavement, complicated grief. And I think, Lisa, you were touching in on that. My son died June 1st of 2014, but 6 weeks before that, my dad died. So both of my rocks, my dad was my rock, my son was my rock. I had like a wipeout. And then to make things worse, my cats died like 3 months later. So, I mean, it was like a disaster for Ava. I had like a love wipeout. So when I went to my therapist, I learned that there's a thing called complicated bereavement. And this is what I'm not a therapist. I mean, I'm not a doctor or anything like that. But yours is very complicated. It's a complicated bereavement, and your soul and your mind are sorting this out. And I want you to be really, really gentle with yourself and non judgmental and not hard, because given your dynamic and the complexity and all the um, things that tug on your heart, that are all the injustices that are happening, like the ex claiming like all this relationship with your son when he wasn't even there. I mean, that stuff rips you apart. It just rips you apart. And the most important thing, and I know your son would want this, our children in heaven, they want one thing for us, and that's our happiness. And the reason I know that is I'm able to connect to the consciousness of children in heaven. That's my gift, and that's what I wrote my book about. So I can't like dial up your Aunt Betty. I'm not a psychic medium like that, but I connect to the children. So right now, as we're speaking, I'm feeling Lisa's daughter, Mia. I'm feeling my son. And I don't know your son, but he's being brought in to me. And he wants so much, Sean, for you to let as much go as you can. It's so hard to do, and it's so easy to say, oh, let it go. Trust me on that one. But the more you can say, these people don't mean anything to me, and let it go, your son is rooting for you on the other side. He loves you so much. He wants you to be happy. He
It's like,
wants you.
but I'm angry. I get angry, and
Yeah.
I get mad at myself for getting angry. Like, I don't think I'm allowed to be angry because I don't know what her grief really is, and I don't know if she's, so I back off. But I feel like I'm not allowed to be angry.
Okay,
But
so
the
let
thing
me
is,
let me tell
I
you,
raised one
you've
of
got
them.
to let that anger out, because if you don't,
I raised my kids.
Mhm.
Like I said,
Right.
four of them, and then on the weekends or whenever, like she was supposed to come for visitation, or we were supposed to come to pick them up,
Right.
and she never would. So every weekend I'd have to deal with them waiting, and then saying, "Oh, your mom called. This
Right.
Disappointed.
came up
Yeah.
or
The
that came up."
disappointment. Sure, sure,
And
sure.
every week it was like, it was a decent excuse at first, but then after a while it was diarrhea, and then it was a joke that they were just, "Oh, mom's got diarrhea. She can't come pick us up." So, and then she just didn't come up and didn't call.
But I don't think there's anything wrong with you getting mad. I don't think you have to direct it
Well,
directly at
here's the thing.
her.
Here's what
You
happened.
know what I mean? I think it's healthy
I
for
saw
you to
that.
get mad.
I saw that every week. I had to deal with that. I
Yeah.
saw them hurt.
Yeah.
And then my ex told me that she was supposed to go over there for my grandson's it was like a holiday, It was Easter. It was Easter, and that her ex-husband was supposed to come, but he has to, leave his girlfriend at their house and come get her, and then go over there in some weird thing. But that they were that they were looking forward to seeing him, and then he just stood them up, so that they were disappointed. And I was like, this dude, who is a nobody, has
Right.
to put my grandkids through what you put my kids through. You're fucking continuing it, and I'm pissed.
Right.
So I didn't know how to deal with it. So I don't know why. I just let it go.
So Sean, Lisa and I are going to make it an executive decision here for you. The release of the anger is critical. And let me tell you why. When my son died, I just wanted facts about how he got the fentanyl, what happened. So I rallied all of his friends around. And they were like the lies, and they were like scurrying like rats off a ship. They were all scared, as they should have been. But I kept saying, you guys, I'm not looking to get anybody in trouble. I need help. I need clarity. I need to know what happened the night he got that fentanyl. Couldn't get an answer. This made me so angry because these are children that I raised in my home that he grew up with. I made peanut butter and jellies for, mac and cheese. They spent the night at my house. My house was like a daycare center. So, and then they all turned on me at the very end. And I was so angry, Sean. I was so angry. And one day I went into my son's room. I swear to God, I'm going to admit this. I screamed so loud to my son, and I said, your friends are pieces of shit. And I screamed so loud, like I thought blood was going to come out of my throat. And I said, why, Kenji? Why? And I screamed, and I thought my neighbors were going to call the police. I screamed for like a half an hour, and I exhausted myself. And then the anger was gone out of my body. And I go back to, if you don't deal with your grief, and the anger is part of it, okay? The anger is justified. It's all part of it. But please, Sean, please get this anger out. Do it appropriately. Don't do something dangerous if you've got to go talk to somebody, or, go hit a tennis ball against a wall, or whatever people do. You don't deserve to hold this in, because
the other thing is that you may be able to have a conversation with your grandchildren's parents now and say, remember what this person put you through as a child. And I remember watching you suffer, and this person disappoints you, and look at what they're doing to your own child.
My kids that live at home said, Dad, why aren't you talking to Nick about this instead of freaking out and being weird? And I was like, okay. So I talked to Nick, and then Nick is like, look, Dad, Mom is crazy. And all the stuff that she told you is not true. They don't love Rick. They weren't waiting for him. They weren't disappointed that he didn't show up. They asked, hey, where's Rick? Oh, okay. But she told me, and whether she's trying to hurt me or not, I don't know.
Right, probably.
She was like, they were so disappointed. They were like, where's Rick? Oh, no, he's not here. Oh, my God. Like, how do they even know who he is? I was like, aren't you not really together with him? Well, I was like, did you bring your boyfriend, or did you bring Rick? I mean.
So some of that is you putting, that's their journey with someone else that you're trying to protect them from.
And then, like, dude, your dad, Mom's probably just trying to hurt you because she's a psycho.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, okay, maybe that's true.
Some of that, maybe.
You talked about talking to someone. I was always the person someone could talk to, no matter what. Like, my son died, but I could be there for everyone else. I could be there for all my kids. I could be there for anyone. But the more and more tragedies that happen, the wall for me to be able to deal with it, or deal with anything, like, I can't watch a Disney movie now and not just
right
down.
Right. Right.
It's so my this isn't not my blood nephew, but he's my nephew. Like, my best friend for 35 years. It's his nephew, but growing up, I was the good uncle, and his blood uncle is, an alcoholic. So, but anyway, we're super close. And I think because we weren't blood, we're able to be even closer as he got older. And he was changing a tire about a year ago on the interstate in Texas. So we have very fast interstate. I think speed limit was 90 90 and 95. He was at an exit changing the tire, and this car was taking the exit, and then decided no, it's the wrong exit. Whips back, and he's there changing the tire. So the car hits him going like 95 miles or 90 miles an hour. So he's there changing the tire. The car hits the car and hits him. Now, it totaled the car, just so you know how hard it hit. But if he was just standing there, he would have been exploded. It would just guts. But he jumps in the air at the last second, as high as he can, and the car hits his feet and legs. That's it. But it shattered his legs, shattered his ankles. So he was in the hospital for 2 months, and they had to reconstruct all the bones. He said he's not going to walk, like maybe never. But he walked out with a cane, or walkers, after 2 months. And then after 3 weeks, he drove over to my house and walked in with a cane. So I was like, dude, there's a reason you're here. You should be dead. You 100% should be dead. But with that came all the painkillers, and he got extremely addicted. He had a good job. He was making decent money. He has 2 kids, but his bills only equaled like probably $800. He had a roommate, and his brother moved in to his house, so the rent was covered. He had to pay like a third of the electric, and that's it. All of his money went to buy pills. All of his money went to buy pills for like a year or so. And so he was really, really addicted. And he shot a guy, was trying to rob him. I feel terrible. I loaned him money. His mother loaned him money, and his girlfriend told me that he was really worried that because I knew he wasn't paying me back. He's like, I have to pay Sean. I have to pay my mom. It's like, I'm going to steal this money from this guy. And so he goes, supposedly meets this guy to sell him drugs. And then the guy's like, okay, give me some drugs. Here's some money. And then he runs off. And then the guy chased him down and caught him. This guy's girlfriend tried to hit him with a car. And then the guy's pistol whipping him. He grabs the gun and he shoots the guy. So he was arrested, and they were going to charge him with murder. That's terrible, terrible, terrible thing. He's just the nicest, goofiest kid there was. He just turned 30. And with COVID, everything's backed up for like they haven't
off the courts. Yeah.
So they had a bond hearing, and it was $100,000. And then his lawyer said, hey, can we get this reduced? And they said, yeah, we'll have another bond hearing in 18 months. So they're so backed up. So plus he was, he hadn't had pain pills for days. So he hung himself in the jail cell.
Oh my God.
Yeah. It's very tough. Tough on my kids. He was just the nicest guy. He loved me so much. He cared more about my happiness than anyone since my mother. Like every birthday, he would take me somewhere. He would, he took me to see Dokken, which was one of my favorite groups growing up. And then he somehow talked the roadie into giving me the lead singer's sunglasses. He just you could ask him if he could do anything, and he would just say yes. Didn't matter. He asked him if he knows how to do brain surgery. He's like, oh yeah, I know, no problem. And then he would show up like, hey man, do you know how to change a dishwasher, or do you know how to take out a food disposal? Yeah, I got it, no problem. Yeah, I know. He'd show up with his toolbox and his phone. I'm like, how many times have you done this? Oh, I've never done it, but I have YouTube, and I got my tools. and he had that attitude, and he was always super helpful. At the funeral, there's all these people that were like, yeah, he came and he like fixed this, and he was laying on my floor, did a terrible job, but he just came right over, and he's like, I can do it for you, no problem, I'll do it, sure. Um, but it was really rough, you know. Um, and it's weird because there's so much in my life that I thought about in the future that he would be a part of crypto. Nobody gives a crap about crypto in my family. My kids, I had to give them money and have them yield farm before they find out, like, hey, this actually works. But he was like, yeah, you don't know what the hell you're talking about, but I'm interested in it. Okay. I was like, hey, man, you got to start doing this. You're giving away free coins. Here's my private keys. Yeah, here you go. Show me how to do it. I was like, dude, you don't give that to people. Those are your private keys. You can't show them to people. But like we went to this Comic-Con, and he used to sell turtles. He had this business where him and his girlfriend would go around to all the fairs. You know, they would just do that circuit fairs and
Like real live turtles or comic
little
turtles?
tiny turtles,
Okay.
and like a little like a plastic aquarium for like $20. You could buy a turtle and a little thing, and it was like they would have booths at like like with fests and fairs and things,
Uh-huh.
and he had fun with it, and he really wanted to do that, to travel, and and he wanted to have a turkey leg business. And I saw this thing. It's a giant mirror, and you set up a booth, and it's connected to Wi-Fi. Basically, people go and they take like selfies at like
Yeah.
parties and things. It costs like $6,000, and I was like, Tony, man, we should both go in on this. I could give you half the money. You get this, you put in half the money. You take this, and you could start doing this selfie thing. He's like, oh no, that's goofy. It's not turtles or turkey legs. I'm like, come on, man.
Well, that's goofy.
I said,
Put
this is
turtles and turkey legs.
yeah, but at the Comic-Con, I saw it. Somebody they had a booth with it.
Mm-hmm.
It just like it hit me. I was like, I was tearing up. So he passed away about, like I said, about a month ago, and then through Robert. So Robert was real close with his family, and I didn't know them. I didn't like them because I was judgmental. Um, I think she was a bartender. I think she was a former stripper. Um, and Robert was a party guy. He definitely partied all the time. And he was real close with them, and she took care of him. He got robbed in Killeen. It's a terrible city. Terrible city. It's the a town over. But he got robbed and beat. He said beat the shit out of him. He like crawled to her house. She took care of him, and then so she was a good person, and she was very close. So when he passed away, I got to know her real well, and I got really really close with her and with her two daughters, like super super bonded. So I feel like she's like a sister to me. The kids are like my nieces, um, and granted they've had not the greatest life. Um, so now Skylar, she's like not like any kid that I had ever met. Just so focused, so like work ethic that was unbelievable. Um, and she used to tell me, Sean, you're the most you're the most positive influence I've ever had in my life. She's like, I'm like, why couldn't you have been around when I was younger? I was like, I'm sorry, I got here as soon as I can, Sky. I'm sorry. And just in any job she had, she would like excel right away. Like within days, they were talking to her about being a manager or supervisor or whatever. Um, so she was so much potential, and then she got murdered last week. Oh, it's just threw me. So it was Tony, and then Skylar, which is really it's been rough.
Sean, so important that you allow yourself to really feel this pain. And when it comes up inside of you, you can't push it away because it's so real. What helped me a lot was when I would feel it, I wanted to come out of my skin for a long time. And then my skin started bleeding out. I almost died. I was suicidal. It was awful. But one of the things that helped me was when I would have, I would get these attacks of pain, like pain in my body. And I would sit down, I would stop everything that I was doing, I don't care what it was. And I would close my eyes and I would hold something from my son. And I would just try to picture him. And the crying was, I cried so hard, blood came out of my eyes for the longest time. And it kind of worked its way out over time as much as possible. And I really urge you, I plead and beg with you. You've had so much tragedy and loss, and you've got to allow yourself time to grieve and cry or talk or whatever it is that you're feeling. There's many things that you can do to promote it, but I think crying, it's a good place to start. But allow yourself to feel the pain. We want to push it away, but that makes it worse. You've got to feel it. You've got to almost love your pain. It's really hard to do, but it's the only thing that I found that works, because our society.
I've always been able to deal with the tragedy, deal with the pain, but be there for other people.
Right.
You know, they come and tell them this is terrible. I'm like, yes, it is. Here's words of encouragement.
Right.
And I want to, and this makes you feel better. And with Skylar, everyone's like, I can't believe it. I'm like, yeah, me neither. This is the worst thing ever. Like, yep, yeah, it is.
Right.
I just agree. I don't know what to say, and I feel, I'm like,
I think that's okay. I think that's where, I think that is being,
I don't like it.
I think that is being real, of saying this does suck. That there, you don't have to make it okay for other people. I mean, I think that's
been able to.
And then you know what, Sean, you want to also understand that you may not be able to be there for them now.
Yeah, you don't have to make it okay for other people.
Right.
That's not your job.
At this time, my personal advice is you have to save yourself first right now. You can't, you've always been there for everybody else around you, from what I hear you. This is not that time. This is about you now. You've got to take care of you, because if you don't take care of you, you've got nothing to give anybody, including your kids. So it's almost like that thing when you're on the airplane and you're flying with a child, they always, when they drop the mask in a depressurization, they always tell the parents to secure their mask first before they put it on their kids. And I never understood that. And so one day I pulled the flight attendant over, I mean, like dumb me. And I said, no, I want to put it on my child first. And she said, if you don't save yourself first, you can't save your kid. And that was like a truth bomb of truth bombs for me. And that's what I'm hearing you say right now. I mean, you've always been there for everybody, but this is your time, Sean. You've got to get back to yourself right now, man.
It feels so foreign, though. It feels like, this is what I'm supposed to do, and I can't do it anymore.
Right.
So this doesn't make sense.
Right. Well,
like the words aren't there, and I'm just like, I don't know why the words aren't there. I don't know what to say. There's nothing. Usually it comes right up. You know, everything's okay. We'll see. Just like I can help people like you're trying to help me. And when I can't, I feel it's just very weird. Her mom, texts me. She texts me what happened. You know, Skylar was shot, last night, and she's dead. And I I was screaming no, and I just text no. And then I was thinking, I was like, I gotta say something. What am I gonna say? I gotta say something to her to make her feel better, and I couldn't think of anything. And I'm thinking this while I'm just screaming, no, scared the dog. Same thing. I thought, like, the neighbors are gonna call the police because I'm just screaming no. But I couldn't stop. Just no.
Sean, if you send her to my website, she should read the Parent Survival Checklist. It's on my website. It's a free download. And Her daughter's been passed for, you said, a month now?
No days.
No, this has just happened like last week.
Okay, this is the perfect time. Okay, so this checklist.
And this has some things on it that, Amy, when I read this, this was stuff that I didn't even think about, but like even very, very practical, like drinking the water, because you don't think about you're crying so much. And when you're like sleeping so much and crying and trying to escape reality, like thinking about eating and some really drinking water. I mean, this was, really helpful.
This is something, the reason this checklist was written is for her. Because when my son died, I kept trying to get help and I couldn't get any help. So I wrote this checklist, and this is the things that my sisters, like anybody who's around her that can help enforce this. These are things that have to happen in the early days after the death of a child. And because
and for you too, Sean, this is something that you may not be thinking about some of these things for yourself too, that might be helpful.
And also for you, Sean, this will give you a call to action. What I hear you saying is you feel helpless with her. Of course you're helpless, but this will give you a call to action. You can say, you know what? You can either, I don't know if she lives near you, can print it out and bring it over. You can refer her to the website. You can go through it with her. She needs help. And this is a step in the right direction. This is what people need in the early days after the death of a child. It's too traumatic to do this alone. She can't do this alone. She can't do it alone.
Okay.
Okay.
So that's my story. That's where I'm at. Bring you up to where I'm at.
Yeah. Well, I saw you hurting, and like Amy said, there is that death cooties thing, and we love our friends, and they are in an awkward position, and we have this weird thing of like always trying to make other people feel okay about it, but we don't know what we need either. And so like I watched that on the videos, the guys just didn't know what to say, so they just ignored it. And I think that's where, if we can start having some of these conversations where we say like, what is it that you need? And, one of those things I've had other people say, oh, they'll talk about Mighty Mia, or they'll talk about my sister that passed away or something. And then they'll go, oh my gosh, I'm sorry I brought her up. And I'm like, no, I'm always thinking of them. So please, if you think of my daughter.
And they're like, oh, I remember when Robert did this and we all laughed. Oh, I'm sorry. Like,
no,
why?
I think of them every day. There's never a moment I'm not thinking of them.
I'm
so
glad
please,
you're thinking of him.
yes, please think of them. Yeah. And so I think the more we can have these conversations and help it not have those death cooties, then I think it helps all of society. Because they're good people. They just don't know how to have the conversation. It hasn't happened to them yet.
Lisa, that's so true. That's absolutely true. Because do you know, it's a statistical fact that every human being that walks the planet at some time in their life will be looking into the eyes of someone who's lost a child. And the more we get over the stigma of death cooties, like the, elbowing, oh, don't bring up her son who died.
Right.
Lisa says, do you think I forget about Mia for 1 minute? Do you think that I forget? My son is in my head 24/7. He's never a moment away from me. And the quicker, and the only way we do it, Sean, is things like what we're doing right now. And that if people know people, is share the videos, share the resources, because that's how we uncover the stigma of death cooties, because our society does not teach us how to grieve.
Death cooties.
That's what I named it, because I was walking down the street where I lived in Marina Del Rey, and I saw some friends of mine. This was about 2 weeks after Kenji died, and they were coming up the street. And literally when they saw me, I saw one whisper to another, and they went down a side alley and took another route. I know it was because they couldn't face me. It was like, oh, there she is. There's Kenji's mom.
They just don't know what to say. And
exactly.
Yeah.
That's how I feel now. That's why I feel awkward. I don't like that, because I don't know what to say. But so I died a while back, and I bring it up with my kids, and they're like, look, Dad, you died. No big deal. We know, everybody knows. And they're like, Dad, everybody dies at least once. It's not a big deal. I was like, all right, man.
Well, I hope that helps a little bit. And I think we can have more conversations like this and have, just keep the conversation going. I hope it helps you. And I think it's time for you to be a little selfish and
Yes, Sean, that's your homework. It's your time now for you.
Use that word. I don't like that word at all.
Oh, you don't like it? Okay.
Selfish? No.
Well, maybe that's the wrong word, but it's time for you to do some healing.
Yeah.
For you to do some healing so you can help others,
Yeah.
So, and once you take that lesson, then you can be the teacher again and you can pass that lesson on to somebody else. Then it's not so selfish, but you have to learn it first.
Yeah. Yeah, I can learn it to help others. That's not selfish at all.
Yes. Then it's not selfish at all. All right, guys. Well, I love you. I'm so thankful that you're in my life and definitely grateful for you guys. So hope this is helpful to everybody that's watching too. So we'll be back next week for the new normal. Hope sending all our love to everybody in the chat. If this was helpful, please send this information to anybody that you have in your life that's grieving. Make sure to check out amyfulmer.com for that information and click on that survival checklist that you can download.
On Facebook, there's a group called VOA, the Voice of Our Angels.
Okay.
Group that I've
Good.
I found it years and years and years and years ago. It's been because when it happens, there's like no one you can talk to, and nobody understands. Like when Bix, I've never met him. I don't know him, but when that happened to him, I was like, I gotta talk to this guy. He's crypto dude. I understand where like it's like you become a member of the shitty club.
Yeah,
but I'll be there and talk to him. So I told Ben that I want to talk to him, but I didn't want to tell him why. I just said I think I need to meet him. I'd like to meet him, talk to him.
I can connect you. He doesn't like to talk publicly about it, but but I can connect you guys on the backside because he has a special connection with his son too. So,
and Sean, if you ever need to talk, just message me on Twitter.
Okay.
Okay, I'm here. Seriously.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, I'm following you.
Okay.
All right, you guys take care. Thanks so much. We'll see you guys next time.
Okay.